to Expressions. I'm Julie Robbins. Today we're bringing you a really toasty show, and we're not talking about roasting marshmallows. We're talking about blowing art glass. So stay tuned. Today is Darren Davis, and Darren, you are the owner-operator of Rainbow Fire Glass Art Studio, right?
Yes, I am.
You have some beautiful artwork here. How did you get started in this?
I have a cousin who has been blowing glass for about 15 years, and he sort of disappeared north of Seattle several years ago. And I went up to visit in '95 and discovered where he was living and working was at the Pilchuck Glass School up there, and they sort of sat me down at a bench with a little bit of glass, and I got hooked and went back to work there the next summer and stayed all summer, and that's where I actually started to learn how to work with it.
And this is some of your artwork right here, isn't
it? Yes. We've begun to experiment a little bit with some different coloring techniques and textures, so to speak. I'm really pleased with these. I feel like they have a little bit of a southwestern feel to them. I'm not sure, but we try to work and arrange anything from the whimsical to the elegant. We play around with attachments to things and putting stuff together this way.
Ooh, now see, I like that's unusual.
And not, you know, we try to keep most of it functional because I find that people want something that they can use.
Right.
But occasionally something comes out that is just fun to look at.
Now, you're not only talented with actually doing the work yourself, but you also teach, is that right?
Yes, we offer a beginner's class for people that are interested in learning how to work with it. Right here. So by the time they're finished, they're generally working on smaller pieces like this and starting to use some color and getting a little bit more control of the glass so they get a nice symmetrical form. Some people catch on faster than others. I have a couple of students that have gotten into pieces that are as large as some of these. They're not quite as controlled, but they're having fun playing with it.
So start out small and it can get bigger.
Start out small and you just work up to it.
All right, Darren, what is the first step? What do we have to do?
Well, first we have to melt some glass. What we use is, it's called batch, and we buy it from a place called Spruce Pine Batch. This is literally the raw soda, potash, lime, silica, and I have to be honest, a lot of other things that I don't know anything about. I'm not going to open any of it up right now because it's kind of messy. It's the consistency of baby powder almost.
Oh, okay.
Okay, when we put it in. Here, once you take these, I want you to have those when we look into the furnace. I want you to have those on because there is some UV and infrared that can, it's bright. It's very bright. It'll bright
protection
glare.
there,
yes,
okay.
Eye protection is very important. This is one of the benches that we work at. We have two of them. We have a number of tools here. Some of them are fairly self-explanatory. You can use various types of shears to trim things down, and tweezers for pulling things out. We'll use these a little bit, show you how to work with those a little bit. The jacks are a very specialized tool, and they're also one of the most important ones, and it's difficult to explain what these are for, but their primary use is for creating a stress mark in the piece so that you can break it off the pipe and get a nice clean break.
Oh, okay.
We have some hardwood cherry blocks that are used for shaping and cooling the glass while you're working on it. And
now they stay wet?
We keep them wet at all times.
Okay.
Okay, and what that does is helps to create essentially a layer of steam between the glass and the wood. So it never really contacts the wood until all that steam's evaporated. So ideally you want to keep it wet at all times.
Okay.
We're going to take a look in the furnace right now. It's currently at 2,072 degrees.
Yeah, I'm liking it at this part of the room.
It's a little warmer over here. Yeah, it gets cool over by the door. Okay, Julie, why don't you go ahead and put your glasses on now.
Okay.
We're going to take a look inside the furnace here.
All right. Oh my goodness.
You can see it's hot.
Yeah, it is.
It's one of the most intimidating aspects of this for most beginners is trying to get used to working with the furnace because it is really hot and you've got to learn to get in and out of there really quick. If you'll come over here, we'll give you a look at the glory hole.
Okay.
This is essentially another oven or a furnace that's used to keep pieces hot while you're working on them. And they, obviously as they get bigger, you need a larger opening. So we have these doors on hinges and then a second set behind there, so you can really...
This is called the glory hole?
It's called the glory holes, and as you can see, it's also very hot. It's actually hotter than the furnace. This is a pipe warmer, and we keep our blowpipes and punty rods in here because if you try to put cold steel into the glass, it makes the glass cold and stiff, and you can no longer work it with it. We call this a garage, and I use this is a garage. We use it for warming up pieces of color that are worked into a piece, and anything that you want to apply. If you don't warm it up first, the intense heat shocks the glass and it'll just explode. This is called the marver, and it is used primarily for shaping and cooling the glass as you're working through it. Marvering is a very subtle skill, and it's one of the things that I try to teach people the most because in my opinion it's one of the most effective tools in the shop. You can do a lot of things with the marver that can be done with any of the other tools, and if I had to be left with only one thing, I would keep this.
And this rack over here?
This is where I keep some of my color supply, and we work with a number of different forms of color, all the way from powders that are literally just dust to what's known as frit, and these come in various sizes, and all this is shards of colored glass, all the way up to the color rods, which is what we keep in the garage to warm up, and you do chunks of it at a time, and we cut these off, and they come in a variety of colors.
This isn't a furnace over here. What is this?
No, this is the annealer. It's essentially a controlled kiln. We hold this at about 1,000 degrees all day. While we're loading it up, as the pieces are finished, they have to be put in here because if they cool too quickly, again, it shocks them and they'll just explode. So we put them in here, let them sit all day, and when I turn it off at the end of the night, it takes about 15 hours for it to cool down to around 100 degrees so that we can take things out. This is the kiln that I use for my students' work, and I've got a few things in here from last night that I think we can probably pull out. A couple of my students did last evening.
Ooh, they did a good job.
They did a good job. They did well. We started working with a mold a little bit to get some of this textured appearance, and
I like that.
teaching them how to apply some color wraps.
That is wonderful. And speaking of students and teaching, when we come back, you're going to teach me how to do
I'm going to
this?
show you how to do something, yeah.
All
Teach you how to
right.
make a flower.
Well, as you can see, I'm ready to go to work here. I've made a complete change. I feel like I'm getting ready to go to a fight or something.
I don't know.
Now tell me, why am I wearing this shirt? I know it's very important as far as the
It's
fabric.
important not to wear synthetics. It's unlikely, but there's a chance that you'll end up shrink wrapped if you get too close to the heat because they will just melt to your skin.
Oh yeah, I don't think I'd like that.
This is Kevlar, and it's a heat-resistant material that'll help keep your hand from getting hot while you're working on it.
Okay, all right, well I'm ready to go. What do we
Okay,
do?
we're going to start you out the way I start all my students. We're going to make a little flower, and I'm going to show you how to do one first, and then I'll walk you through one.
All right.
Okay? We always work with the small, solid rods on these because this is not a blown item. It's more of a solid sculptural piece.
Okay.
And as I said before, we need to heat the tip up a little bit. Go right in here. Now, the hottest place in this glory hole is right there at the top of that hole because that's where the heat, as it rises, is trying to vent from there.
Okay, and you turn it just to make
Always keep it turning. If you don't keep it turning while you got glass on it, the glass hits the ground.
Ah, okay.
Another thing I tell them is that its most fundamental level, this is heat and gravity. is all it's about, is learning how to control and manipulate those two things. Always dip it in the water just for a second.
All right.
And another thing is I always tell them, don't open that door any more than you absolutely have to get in and out of there. There's no sense exposing yourself to more heat than you have to.
Okay, now what? Oh, is that, you got the glass out of it?
This is glass. Okay? Now we're going to go to the marver with it. And what I'm going to want to do is pull the glass off the rod. So I'm going to let gravity do some of that for me and let it flow.
Okay.
So you can see it's almost the consistency of honey. Now if you drop the handle of this all the way back to the ground as far as possible and then slowly start to bring it up, I tell them to think of it as smoothing a wrinkle. You're going to smooth the glass out towards the end. Give it a quick press into a little disc shape.
All right.
And then if we move quickly enough,
I was going to say timing is a lot of it.
do all
isn't
this in one heat. You want to choke up on these real close.
Okay.
And just give it a little quick pinch and a pull. Feels like one of my students has put the tips of these in the wax.
Oh.
Diamond shears that we talked about earlier. I'm not really squeezing down on the back of this. I'm using the flat of the blades against the back of the pedals and pulling slowly. And I'm just going to let that hang. And this is going to be where we break the flour off. I'm just gently squeezing it and then turning a little bit. And in effect, I'm cooling that spot so that it'll break clean right there. Now, if I just give the rod a little tap,
Comes right off.
comes right off. We'll use this small torch to melt that sharp spot off and soften it up so that when it comes out of the annealer, it won't cut you. Okay, Julie, you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, I'm going to gather the glass for you, and then I'll give it to you, and you can take it over to the marver and start shaping your flour out.
Now, this is a pretty advanced step, right?
It takes a little more practice to do this. Some people, as I said, get it faster than others, but the furnace is so intimidating when you first start out that I usually spend a good deal of time working with them. Now, if you're right-handed, you're going to want to keep that turning, hold it down, get it on the other side of your body so that your right hand is on the handle.
Way?
Yeah.
Okay. Ah! Okay.
Okay.
Now what I do?
Drop the handle back towards the ground.
Okay. And roll
Press on it a little bit as you turn it, and what that will do is squeeze the glass out to the end of the rod.
Ah.
Okay. Now, pick it up.
Pick it up.
Hold it straight up in the air with the handle up high. Give it a real quick press.
Ah.
Good. Now, let's go sit down at the bench and see if we can get the pedals pulled out on it.
Which way do I do it? Right here?
Now, you've got to sit down, so get it around that way. There you go.
Okay.
Lay the rod across the rails.
Okay.
Get your tweezers in your hand.
Tweezers.
Pull this over so you can reach it.
Oh, and this one I pinch, right?
Choke up on those a little bit, and you'll have more control on them. Now, just a quick pinch and a pull.
Oh, man.
It gets cold fast.
It's hard to hold on
If you'll
to.
try to grab just the very edge, it'll be a little bit easier.
They're cold. It's cold.
Let's go heat it up to glory.
Okay. Man, you do have to move fast on this. Okay, go
Just
here.
lay it on the yoke and then stick it inside there, and you don't have to go in very deep.
Right here?
Right there is good.
Turn.
Just keep it turning, and what you're going to do is watch for the glass to start to soften. It will begin to try to move around, and those little marks that you put in it with your tweezers are going to soften as it begins to melt some more.
Okay.
Okay, once it starts to do that, then it should be hot enough to work with again. It shouldn't take very long. Okay, I want you to hold it down level again.
Okay.
And just stop for a minute and see if it looks like it's moving. See it starting to flow a little bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and keep it in there about another 10 seconds, and then we'll go back to the bench and try to finish it out.
Okay.
Now, if you'll lay that across the rail, there you go, that's fine.
All right.
Get it over so you can reach it. There you go, very good.
Whoops, sorry. All right, the first deformed flower you've ever seen.
Oh, no, it's not. Okay, good. Now, see if you can get the shears on it. Some people's hands are a little small. If they are, then try putting them over the rod and then coming back.
Like right here or in
Get
here?
the whole thing on there.
Okay.
Now slide them back over the whole deal right up to the back of the pedals. Remember, you don't want to squeeze, but you want to use the flat of the blades to pull that out. And if it's not moving, then we need to heat it up again. Keep turning. See how your flour's slumping?
Oh,
It's all right. Go ahead and get your shears on it while it's hot, and you can straighten it out. No. Back against the pedals. Open it up all the way and just pull outwards. See how that's starting to stretch out for you? You're almost there. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Golly.
Okay, release it gently and keep them on there. Now do it some more.
Okay, here we go.
Good. Now, just let that hang. Keep the shears on it. Bring them right up to this point at the end of the rod.
Okay.
And start squeezing. Give it a little squeeze and then release it and turn it a little bit. Squeeze it again. Turn it back a little bit. We're going to do this until it looks like it's starting to lose some of that glowing color, and that'll be a good indication that it's cool enough to tap it and knock it off of there. Don't turn back too far, you'll get your fingers. Now, go ahead and hold it right over this little graphite paddle. See if you can get your flour to fall off and stand up right there. Pull your shears off. There you go. Tip it up a little bit. Now give it a tap with the edge of the shears.
Right here?
Yep. There you go.
Woo!
Right in there. You did very well. That was good.
I made a blob.
No, you made a flower. You should. Not everyone gets it that quickly.
All right, Darren, we're getting ready to start one of the larger pieces. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we did a show before with solid glass, and this we're going to do blown glass, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you can explain the difference to us as you're going along.
Sure. The first thing I'm going to do is make a collar out of this that I can use as sort of a glue stick to pick up a piece of the color that I have in the garage. So what I've done essentially is exposed the hole in the blowpipe.
Okay. So you meant to do that, didn't you?
I meant to do that. I wish that I could figure out a way to save those because I think they're really cool, but they're just so thin that it's virtually impossible. You can't even handle them. It's paper thin.
Okay.
Now I'm going to have to heat this back up and get it shaped a little bit, and once it's hot, I can literally just stick it onto one of those pieces of color and pick it up, and then we'll melt that in, and that's what I'll start my bubble in. Because this is not as hot as the Glory Hole, I have to introduce it to the heat slowly. Otherwise, the whole thing will just explode and come off in little bitty chunks inside there. So I'm going to warm it in slowly, and this is color application, particularly using this method, is a long, tedious process. I'm going to go ahead and go to the bench and get this shaped a little bit and start my bubble in it. See if that was enough. Looks like it was. You know, what I want to do is cool the tip of this a little bit because I want to keep that part thick all the way through this until I'm almost done. I'm going to blow the shoulders out a tiny bit more. Now, before I can put any more glass over this, I have to let it cool off. If I try to go into the furnace with it this hot, it'll just melt off in there. Okay, when I say cool off, I don't mean so that I can touch it. It's still going to be about 1,500 degrees before we put it in. Now I'm going to put some powdered color over this. This is a black powder. I'm just going to keep with this until I can see that it's not picking it up anymore.
And here's one of your helpers helping you here.
This is one of my assistants, Wendy Hickman.
Okay.
Now I want to melt this in. Would one of you start warming in the cane for me, please, with the torch? I have some pieces of glass cane that have been pulled out into straight rods, and they need to be warmed up a little bit or they won't stick to this well, and I may not be able to pick them all up at one time. This is going to give it, it's going to give it some shape to, or actually not so much shape, but the stripes, the striation in the color, and we're going to pick up our cane out here, hopefully.
Oh, wow.
I got all three of them. Good.
Oh, that's neat.
There, I just need to melt those in, and I'm going to work on the marver a little bit to get this all shaped up and cool.
Okay.
And then we'll be ready for our final gather, and we can go ahead and blow the piece out. Keep heating this up until I'm sure. I'm going to continue to heat and marver, and each time I marver it, it's going to close it back down and push the air back into the pipe, so I have to be sure and blow it back out, otherwise we'll collapse the bubble. But I want to be sure that that cane is fused on there good, and I'd like to get a little bit of the texture out of it. I don't mind having some because it can trap some really interesting bubbles occasionally.
Darren, this is what we're striving for, isn't it?
That's what we're going to try to do here, something close to that. I've used essentially the same colors on this piece, and that form is what we're going to shoot for.
And these are the stripes that you were talking about that you just did.
This is where, when we put the powder on the exterior and then put it in the mold, each ridge within the mold concentrates that color in those places. So the places where it's grooved, it'll blow out thin and you can see through it, but it keeps the concentration color there, and that's what brings the stripes into it.
It's a beautiful piece.
And this is the cane we picked up. Ultimately, it'll stretch out and spread out and be a nice, brilliant accent to the piece.
Whew. Okay, you just applied some more glass.
See the bubbles? Blocks are just, for my purposes at least, I use primarily for cooling and shaping. I don't want to cool this too much because I want to be able to continue to work with it. As I said, we want to make the most of each heat so that we don't spend too much time standing in front of that glory hole. Once I've got it shaped up and under control, I want to chill the bottom. I always work from the pipe out. I'm going to keep the bottom as thick as possible until the very end. So I'm cooling that off with some wet newspaper. And then we'll start to blow it out from the pipe end and work out that way on it. And part of what I'm doing here is pulling more clear glass out to the tip. If you watch, you'll see that you're going to get a layer of clear over the bottom of it as I work this out, if I've done it well. What I want to do now is get my jack line established, and this is going to be the break-off point for this piece. Okay? Get it right up under my jacks, right up under them. Press a little bit. Get right under them. Stay under them. There you go.
It's burning me. What was Wendy helping you with there?
Wendy was helping me to flatten the bottom and bring a little crisper edge to that so it's not quite so rounded.
Okay.
This is Ann Martin. She's going to bring me a punty, which is what we're going to transfer from the blowpipe to. It's another rod so that I can work on the mouth of the piece now. Relax. Let me have it. You ready? Thanks.
That was pretty smooth, guys.
Yeah, that went well.
Hey, Darren, what's this process?
What I'm trying to do here is puff the upper portion of this out a little bit. Not sure it's going to be enough to get quite as big as that other one.
Oh, it's still going to be beautiful. That's looking good, Darren. Oh, I like that. Is going to help you here.
Okay, you ready? Here's my knife.
So you're taking it off the rod now?
You ready? Yep, we're going to put it in the annealer.
All right. What a workout. How long does it take the product to cool?
It actually takes about 15 hours, but we're going to leave that in throughout the day as we work, and when we're finished, we'll shut it down, so by early afternoon tomorrow it should be done.
Well, wonderful. Thank you again for being on the program and teaching me how to do this.
We'll save your flour for you.
And we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Expression at the Rainbow Fire Glass Art Studio in downtown Tulsa. We hope you've been entertained and learned a little bit. We'll see you next week.